200 people filled the pews. Sunday morning light poured through stained glass windows, painting the congregation in blues and golds. The organ played softly. Babies cried. Women in their finest hats whispered prayers. Outside, Harlem was alive with the sounds of a September morning, cars honking, street vendors calling, church bells ringing across the neighborhood. At the front of the church, a priest held a 6-month-old baby over a marble baptismal font. The baby's name was Marcus Anthony Russo. His father, Vincent Russo, stood beside the priest, hand on his son's head. Vincent was smiling, proud, surrounded by family. What those 200 people didn't know, what Vincent's wife holding flowers didn't know, was that there was a coffin waiting for Vincent 3 blocks away. A coffin that had been custom-made 2 weeks earlier. Mahogany, brass handles, satin lining, paid for in cash by Bumpy Johnson himself. Vincent, Vinny the Snake Russo, Bumpy's lieutenant for 8 years. The man Bumpy had promoted from street collector to operations manager. The man who ran Bumpy's entire East Harlem territory. The man who knew every route, every safe house, every payment schedule, every weakness in Bumpy's operation. The man who'd been feeding information to the Genovese crime family for 6 months. Meeting with Vincent, the Chin Gigante, every Tuesday night. Giving up locations, names, money movements, everything. In exchange for $50,000 and a promise when the Genovese family took over Harlem, Vinny would run it all. But what Vinny didn't know, what the Genovese family didn't know, was that Bumpy Johnson had known about the betrayal for 5 weeks. Every meeting, every secret, every piece of information Vinny had sold, and Bumpy had let it continue. On purpose, because Bumpy Johnson didn't just want to punish a traitor. He wanted to send a message so powerful, so public, so unforgettable that every hustler in Harlem would remember it for the next 50 years. He wanted to teach a lesson about loyalty, about family, about the price of betrayal, and he wanted to do it at a baptism. In front of 200 witnesses, at the exact moment Vincent Russo thought he was celebrating new life, that's when Bumpy would deliver death. What happened in the next 40 minutes didn't just end one man's life. It changed how the Genovese family looked at Harlem. It changed how Bumpy's organization understood loyalty. It changed what baptism meant in that church. Because when that ceremony ended, Vincent Russo walked out of Street Phillips Episcopal Church. But he never made it home. He made it to his coffin instead. This is the story they tell in whispers, the story old-timers share when young hustlers ask what real betrayal looks like, the story about the morning Bumpy Johnson gave a baptism gift no one could ever forget, the morning Vincent Russo held his son for the last time. To understand what happened in that church, we have to go back 8 years. Back to when Vincent Russo wasn't a traitor, back to when he was just a hungry kid trying to survive. Arthur Avenue, the Bronx. Vincent Russo grew up Italian in an Italian neighborhood. His father ran a butcher shop, his uncles worked for the Genovese family. Vincent knew the life, knew the rules, knew how power worked. But Vincent wanted more than the Bronx could give him. He wanted Harlem. He wanted the numbers racket. He wanted the kind of money that made men respect you. So in 1948, at 22 years old, Vincent did something almost unheard of. He crossed the border, left Arthur Avenue, walked into Harlem, and asked for a meeting with Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy's people laughed at first. An Italian kid? Wanting to work in Harlem? For a black operation? But Bumpy saw something in Vincent: hunger, ambition, intelligence, and most importantly, no ties to the 5 families yet. He was clean. Bumpy gave him a test. Simple, dangerous, perfect. There was a police captain shaking down Harlem businesses, Captain O'Malley, Irish, brutal. Taking 20% off every numbers operation in the 140 seconds, Bumpy's people couldn't touch him. Too much heat, too many witnesses. But an Italian kid? Nobody would suspect an Italian kid. Vincent spent 2 weeks following O'Malley, learned his routes, his timing, his habits. Every Tuesday night, O'Malley collected his cut from a bar on Lenox Avenue, walked the same way home, past the same alley. Alone, Vincent waited in that alley with a lead pipe. O'Malley never collected again. And Vincent had Bumpy's respect. For the next 8 years, Vincent Russo became Bumpy's right hand. He was smart, ruthless, loyal. Or so everyone thought. He learned the business from the ground up. Started as a collector, then an enforcer, then a territory manager. By 1954, Vincent was running all of East Harlem, 40 blocks, 30 employees, $100,000 moving through his hands every week. Bumpy trusted him completely. Invited him to family dinners. Stood at his wedding. Was there when Vincent's son was born. They weren't just boss and lieutenant. They were brothers. Until February 1956. That's when Vincent made his first mistake. The mistake that would eventually put him in that coffin. February 1956. A card game in Little Italy. Vincent had a gambling problem. Not a big one, not out of control, just enough to get him in trouble. He owed $18,000 to a high-stakes poker game run by Michael Mickey C. Coppola, a Genovese family associate. The kind of man who didn't forgive debts Vincent tried to pay. But the money he had access to was Bumpy's money. And taking from Bumpy's operation? That was suicide. So Vincent did what desperate men do. He tried to negotiate. That's when Mickey C. made the introduction. March 1956. A social club basement on Mulberry Street. Vincent sat across from Vincent Gigante. The chin. Underboss of the Genovese family. The man who'd been trying to take Harlem for 10 years. Gigante was direct. No games, just business. You owe $18,000. I can make that disappear, plus pay you $50,000 cash. All you have to do is tell me how Bumpy Johnson operates. Vincent's hands went cold. You're asking me to betray Bumpy. I'm asking you to be smart, Gigante said. Bumpy's time is ending. Harlem is changing. The old rules don't apply anymore. You can go down with him, or you can rise with us. Gigante laid it out. Simple, clear, brutal. Vincent would feed them information. Schedules, routes, weaknesses. When the time was right, the Genovese family would move in, take over Bumpy's operation, and Vincent would run Harlem for them. You do this, Gigante said, your debt disappears. You get $50,000, and you become the most powerful man in Harlem. Or you walk out that door and owe me $18,000 by Friday. Your choice. Vincent had 72 hours to decide. 3 days to choose between loyalty and survival. He chose survival. For the next 6 months, Vincent Russo became a ghost, living 2 lives, smiling in Bumpy's face during the day, meeting with Gigante every Tuesday night. He gave them everything. The location of Bumpy's main counting house, the names of Bumpy's police contacts, the schedule for cash movements, the addresses of safe houses, the identities of Bumpy's informants inside the 5 families. Every week, Gigante paid him cash. 5,000. Then another 5. Then another. By August 1956, Vincent had received $35,000. His debt was gone. His bank account was growing. His wife was pregnant with their second child. Everything was perfect. Except for one problem. Bumpy Johnson had known since April, because Vincent made one critical mistake. He told his cousin about the money. His cousin Salvatore Russo, who worked as a driver for the Genovese family, who heard things, who owed Bumpy Johnson a massive favor from 1952, a favor involving a murder charge, a disappeared witness, and an alibi that saved Sal from life in prison. Sal never forgot that debt. So when Sal heard his cousin Vincent was feeding information to Gigante about Bumpy Johnson, Sal made a phone call. 2 days later, Bumpy knew everything. Most men would have killed Vincent immediately, in an alley, quick, clean, no witnesses. But Bumpy Johnson wasn't most men. He wanted to make a statement. He wanted every person in his organization to understand what betrayal cost. He wanted the Genovese family to know that Harlem couldn't be bought. And he wanted to do it in the most public, most symbolic, most devastating way possible. He would wait for Vincent's son's baptism. August 15th, 1956. 3 weeks before the baptism, Bumpy called a meeting, not at his usual locations, not anywhere Vincent would know about. A warehouse in the South Bronx, concrete floors, 1 light bulb, 6 of Bumpy's most trusted men who'd been with him for decades. "Vinny Russo is working with the Genovese family," Bumpy said. No emotion, just facts. The room exploded, shouting, cursing, demands for immediate execution. Bumpy raised his hand. "Silence. We're going to do this right. We're going to send a message that'll last 50 years. We're going to make it public. We're going to make it meaningful." He pulled out a calendar, pointed to September 3rd. Vinny's son gets baptized that day. Street Phillips Church. 200 people. His whole family, his wife, his mother, his aunts and uncles. "You're going to hit him at his son's baptism?" one lieutenant asked. "Not hit him," Bumpy said. "Deliver him." Bumpy explained the plan. Meticulous, brilliant, cruel. They would let Vincent finish the ceremony, let him hold his son, let him smile for photographs, let him think everything was perfect. Then, when he left the church, Bumpy's men would be waiting. Not to kill him in the street, that was too simple. They'd take him to a location 3 blocks away, an empty social hall, where a coffin would be waiting. The coffin Bumpy had ordered 2 weeks earlier, custom made, with Vincent's name already engraved on a brass plate inside the lid. "We're going to give Vincent Russo a choice," Bumpy said. "He can get in that coffin voluntarily, accept his fate like a man, confess what he did in front of witnesses, or we put him in that coffin the hard way. Either way, he's going in that box." "And then?" someone asked. "Then we nail it shut. We deliver it to Vincent Gigante's social club, with a note. The note says one thing. This is what happens when you try to buy Harlem." Silence in the room. "Gigante will open that coffin," Bumpy continued. "He'll see Vincent Russo, and he'll understand that Harlem isn't for sale, not for 50,000, not for 50 million, never." One lieutenant finally spoke. "Bumpy, this is going to start a war." Bumpy smiled. "No, this is going to end one. The Genovese family has been testing me for 10 years, sending people into my territory, trying to flip my men, making moves. This ends it. When Gigante sees that coffin, he'll know. You don't buy Harlem. You don't infiltrate Harlem. You respect Harlem, or you die." The plan was set. September 2nd, 1956. One day before the baptism. Vincent Russo couldn't sleep. Tomorrow was his son's baptism. His mother was flying in from Italy. His wife's family was coming from New Jersey. The church was booked. The restaurant was reserved for the celebration afterward. Everything was perfect. Except Vincent felt something. A weight, a darkness, a sense that something was wrong. He'd been to Bumpy's office that afternoon. Regular weekly meeting. Everything seemed normal. Bumpy was friendly, asked about the baby, about the baptism, even gave Vincent a gift, a gold cross necklace for the baby. "For Marcus," Bumpy said. "May he grow up with honor and loyalty." Vincent had thanked him. But something in Bumpy's eyes felt off. Cold. Distant. Vincent poured himself a drink. Then another. By midnight, he'd convinced himself it was guilt, just guilt, nothing more. Bumpy didn't know, couldn't know. Vincent had been careful. So careful, he went to bed. Barely slept. September 3rd, 1956, 9:45 a.m. The baptism was beautiful. The priest performed the ceremony with 200 people watching. Vincent's mother cried. His wife glowed. His 6-month-old son, Marcus, barely made a sound as the holy water touched his forehead. Vincent held his son and smiled for photographs. Outside the church, guests threw rice. Kids ran on the sidewalk. Cars honked congratulations. Vincent's wife kissed him. "Let's go to the restaurant. Everyone's waiting." "You go ahead," Vincent said. "I need to stop by the office, pick up something for Bumpy. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. His wife nodded, took the baby, got in a car with her mother. Vincent walked alone down 134th Street, heading toward his car parked 2 blocks away. He never made it to his car. At the corner of 134th and Lenox, 3 men stepped out of a doorway. Vincent recognized them. "Bumpy's men. Vinny," one of them said. "Mr. Johnson wants to see you." "Right now." Vincent's stomach dropped. "I'm on my way to..." Now. They surrounded him. Not aggressive. Not violent. Just insistent. Vincent had no choice. He walked with them. They led him 1 block south, to a building Vincent knew, an old social hall, used for weddings, funerals, community events. The door was open. Vincent stepped inside. The room was empty except for one thing, a coffin, sitting in the center of the room. Mahogany, brass handles, lid open. Vincent's knees nearly gave out. Bumpy Johnson stepped out of the shadows. "Hello, Vinny." Vincent tried to speak. Couldn't. Bumpy walked slowly around the coffin, ran his hand along the polished wood. "You know what this is?" Vincent shook his head. "This is your baptism gift, from me to you, for Marcus, custom made, 2 weeks ago. Your name's already engraved inside." Bumpy opened the lid fully. The interior was white satin, and there, on a small brass plate, Vincent Anthony Russo, 1926 to 1956. "How long did you think you could lie to me, Vinny?" Vincent's voice cracked. "Bumpy, I can explain. I know about Gigante. I know about the meetings. Every Tuesday night for 6 months. I know about the 18,000 you owed. I know about the 50,000 he paid you. I know about every single piece of information you sold." Vincent's face went white. "I've known since April, Vinny. 5 months. I let you keep going because I wanted to see how deep you'd go, how much you'd sell, how little our 8 years together meant to you." Bumpy stepped closer. "You stood at my table, ate with my family. I was at your wedding, Vinny. I held Marcus the day he was born. I gave him a gold cross this morning." Tears started running down Vincent's face. "And you sold me for $50,000. The room was silent, except for Vincent's breathing. Bumpy gestured to the coffin. "You have a choice. You can get in that coffin voluntarily, accept what you did, confess it in front of witnesses, die like a man, or my guys put you in that coffin the hard way. Either way, you're getting in that box. And that box is getting delivered to Vincent Gigante with a note. The note says, 'This is what happens when you try to buy Harlem.'" Vincent fell to his knees. "Bumpy, please. My son, my wife, my family. Please. You should have thought about them before you betrayed me." Bumpy nodded to his men. They stepped forward. Vincent stood, looked at the coffin, looked at Bumpy. "I'm sorry," Vincent whispered. "So am I, Vinny. So am I." What happened next took 3 minutes. Vincent Russo climbed into that coffin, voluntarily, lay down on the white satin, stared up at the lid. Bumpy stood over him. "You broke the one rule, Vinny, loyalty above everything. You forgot where you came from. You forgot who gave you your power. You forgot that in Harlem, family isn't blood, it's choice. And you chose wrong." Vincent closed his eyes. Bumpy lowered the lid. The sound of the first nail being hammered echoed through the empty hall, then the second, then the third. By the 4th nail, Vincent was screaming inside the coffin, pounding on the lid, begging. By the 10th nail, he'd gone silent. By the 15th nail, it was over. The coffin was sealed. Bumpy's men loaded it onto a truck, drove it to Mulberry Street in Little Italy, parked in front of Vincent Gigante's social club. They left the coffin on the sidewalk, with an envelope taped to the lid. Inside the envelope, a single note written in Bumpy's handwriting. "This is what happens when you try to buy Harlem. Don't test me again. Bumpy Johnson." Vincent Gigante opened that coffin 3 hours later. When he saw Vincent Russo's body inside, Gigante called off every operation in Harlem, pulled back every associate, cancelled every plan. He sent word through back channels, "Respect, the message is received." The Genovese family didn't try to move into Harlem again for 12 years. At 2:30 p.m. that day, Vincent Russo's wife was still waiting at the restaurant with 200 guests, wondering where her husband was. The police found the empty coffin 2 days later, abandoned in an alley in Queens. No body inside. Vincent Russo was never officially found. His wife filed a missing person report. The investigation went nowhere. Vincent's mother flew back to Italy heartbroken. His son Marcus grew up without a father. The baptism became a ghost story. People whispered about it for decades. The ceremony where a man held his son for the last time. where 200 people celebrated new life while death waited 3 blocks away. Street Phillips Church still stands on West 134th Street. The congregation knows the story. When baptisms happen now, old-timers glance at the doors. Remember the morning Vincent Russo walked out and never walked back. But here's what most people don't know. 10 years later, in 1966, Vincent Gigante requested a meeting with Bumpy Johnson at a neutral location, a restaurant in Midtown Manhattan. Gigante arrived with 2 bodyguards. Bumpy arrived alone. They sat across from each other. 2 legends, 2 enemies, 2 men who understood power. "I wanted to tell you something," Gigante said. "About Vincent Russo." Bumpy said nothing, just listened. "After you sent me that coffin, I understood. You weren't just punishing a traitor. You were teaching a lesson. About Harlem. About loyalty. About respect." Gigante paused. "That lesson, it saved lives, because every man in my organization heard what happened to Vincent Russo, and not one of them ever tried to infiltrate your operation again. Not one tried to flip your people. Not one disrespected your territory. That coffin did more to prevent war than any peace treaty ever could." Bumpy smiled slightly. "That's the point," Bumpy said. "Violence for violence's sake is worthless, but violence with meaning, violence that teaches, that's power." Gigante nodded. "I came here to say respect, and to say thank you, because that lesson didn't just protect you, it protected me too. It showed my men what betrayal costs, what disloyalty earns. Some of them were getting ideas, getting ambitious. After Vincent Russo, those ideas disappeared. The 2 men shook hands, an understanding, a respect, not friendship, never friendship, but mutual recognition. When Bumpy Johnson died in 1968, Vincent Gigante sent flowers to his funeral. The card read, "To the man who taught Harlem what loyalty means, rest in power." So what's the lesson here? It's not just, don't betray your boss, that's obvious. The real lesson is about symbolic justice, about making consequences so memorable, so meaningful, so public that they prevent future betrayals. Bumpy didn't just kill Vincent Russo. He created a story, a legend, a warning that lasted generations. Young hustlers coming up in the 60s, 70s, 80s heard about Vincent Russo, the man who betrayed Bumpy Johnson for $50,000, the man who got into his own coffin at his son's baptism, and they learned, no amount of money is worth the price of disloyalty. Vincent Russo was never officially found. His death was never officially recorded, but everyone knew. His wife remarried in 1959. His son Marcus grew up, became a teacher, moved to California. Marcus never learned the full truth about what happened to his father. His mother told him his father died in an accident. Left it at that. Maybe that was mercy. Bumpy Johnson lived 12 more years after Vincent Russo. When Bumpy died, the stories people told weren't about the violence, weren't about the money, weren't about the power. They told stories about the lessons, about the coffin at the baptism, about the man who valued loyalty so much he turned betrayal into a teaching moment. September 3rd, 1956, Street, Phillips Episcopal Church. That morning, 200 people witnessed a baptism, a celebration of new life, a father holding his son. They didn't know they were also witnessing an ending. The last time Vincent Russo would hold his child, the last time he'd smile, the last time he'd breathe free air. 3 blocks away, a coffin waited, custom-made, name engraved, lid open. Vincent Russo walked out of that church thinking about his son's future. He never made it to that future. He made it to a coffin instead. And 50 years later, when old-timers talk about Bumpy Johnson, they always come back to that story, the baptism gift, the coffin, the lesson. They shake their heads, they smile, they remember, and they say the same thing. You don't betray Bumpy Johnson. Not for money, not for power, not for anything. Because in Harlem, loyalty isn't negotiable. It's the only currency that matters. That's the legacy. That's the lesson. That's why Bumpy Johnson isn't just remembered as a gangster. He's remembered as a teacher, the man who turned baptisms into funerals, the man who turned coffins into classrooms, The man who taught Harlem that some things, family, loyalty, honor, are worth more than any amount of money. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more untold stories from Harlem's golden age. And leave a comment. Would you have done what Bumpy did? Or would you have just killed Vincent quietly? We drop new stories every week. Real history. Real legends. Real lessons. This is Harlem. This is Bumpy Johnson. This is the untold legend.